Kamala Harris, we would like her to go ahead and, take the stand and lead our country.
Being a double minority in a sense, a woman and black, I'm not saying I'm against it, but I could see that going left in a sense, especially the country we live in.
We'd vote for a ham sandwich over Donald Trump.
Welcome back to Battleground. With Joe Biden out as the Democratic nominee, what happens next? Is Kamala Harris a shoo-in? And what about a contested convention? Could someone else emerge as the Democratic nominee? To help make sense of all of this, I am pleased to be joined by Doug Kriner, professor of American institutions at my alma mater of Cornell University. Doug, so good to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me, Essie. It's a pleasure.
Okay, so many questions here now that Biden has stepped aside. This feels unprecedented. Let's start at the top. Does Kamala Harris automatically become the Democratic nominee?
Unprecedented indeed. But no, Kamala Harris is not automatically the nominee. But with leading potential rivals from Gretchen Whitmer to J.B. Pritzker to Gavin Newsom having already followed the president's lead and endorsed her, Harris is all but the presumptive nominee. And I think really the Democrats are in a real catch-22 here. And they would have been even if President Biden had stepped aside a few weeks ago after the debate. On the one hand, Harris is the sitting VP. It's just a logical choice. Alternatives like an open convention are messy and uncertain, and we haven't done one for over 50 years. And not nominating Harris could really alienate some key constituencies within the party. But a coronation that gives rank and file party members virtually no input into selecting the nominee could alienate voters who are accustomed to picking their presidential candidates. Right. And it could be a pretty tough sell for a party that's running under the banner of defending democracy.
Okay, so if someone else were to jump in, how would someone who currently doesn't have any delegates, how would they navigate that?
Yeah, so parties set their own rules for nominations, and they can change them at any time for any reason. That said, even absent a rules change, Biden's delegates are now unbound, and they're free to vote for whomever they please. So any candidate could throw their hat into the race, but many with their eye on 2028 might hesitate to incur the political fallout from challenging Harris.
Okay, and so what the delegates that were attached to Joe Biden, you just said they're free to do whatever they want in his absence. Does that happen before the convention or at the convention?
So delegates can change their minds up until the moment of the roll call when they sort of actually physically cast those ballots with the sort of additional complexities of the online vote, if it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, all the rest. But sort of the convention is still the core instrument. Even though it hasn't been a source of drama since maybe '68, it's still the core instrument through which which parties pick nominees. So one other little wrinkle there to remember is there are about 4,000 delegates to the DNC that are awarded via the primaries, and almost all of them went to President Biden. These are still the only delegates who can vote on the first ballot, and they're now unbound, and they're free to support any candidate. If no candidate were to get an absolute majority on the first ballot, that's when the superdelegates from 2016 and 2012, or I should say 2016 and 2020 debates, the elected officials and party leaders, they get to vote on the second and any subsequent ballot. And with the endorsements that Harris is streaming in and racking up among many of these superdelegates, this could really boost her if it were to go to a second ballot.
Yeah. So those endorsements are important. Also important, money. What happens to all of the money that Biden has raised? Where does it go now and into the convention?
So there's some considerable uncertainty here. It seems very likely that Harris can use these funds. Her name is already on the FEC paperwork registering the campaign committee. And the committee already yesterday filed paperwork to change its name from Biden for president to Harris for president. But the RNC has announced that it may challenge this in court. And even if they don't ultimately succeed, they could cause significant headaches. If it's someone besides Harris, it's unclear whether Biden can simply transfer those funds to another candidate. Even if that's the case, it's not like all of the money is going to be returned to donors or just go off into the oblivion. He could transfer the money to a super PAC and possibly also to the DNC itself. In a post-Citizens United world, I'd argue this is just less of an issue than it would have been 20 years ago.
Doug Kriner from Cornell, thanks so much for joining me, and go Big Red.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay. For more on all of this, visit us at battlegroundnews.com or click on the QR code here. You can sign up for our newsletter, download our interactive swing state map, and find our social media links. Our megaphone poll question of the vote is about Donald Trump's VP pick, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. We asked voters in our swing states to weigh in, and here's how they responded. Battleground will be right back.